At least 6 persons have been killed, while 16 others sustained various degrees of injuries from gunshot wounds following communal clashes in some parts of the state capital. Earlier today, talking about Jos, the Plateau state capital, a police public relations officer in the state, Chiopev Matthias, told Channels Television the trouble started following the discovery of a corpse at Angwan Demisa in Dutse Uku. According to him, the discovery sparked off the skirmishes, which later spread to other areas, resulting in pandemonium in the affected areas. The police PRO says security operatives have been mobilized to Dutseuku, Rekos, Celebridge and Angwan Rukuba communities in Jos North local government area of the state to forestall any further crisis. We're looking at another case of a collapsed building, this time in Imo State capital, Owerri, where unconfirmed number of persons narrowly escaped death. The uncompleted 2-story building situated at number 10 Amaram Extension in Owerri left 4 persons critically injured this afternoon. Although no death was recorded, eyewitnesses say the building has been abandoned for over 20 years. According to an eyewitness who was part of the rescue mission, 4 persons, including a female occupant, were rescued from the debris. They've been rushed to hospital. A shop owner in front of the collapsed building, who was bruised in the process of escape when the building collapsed on his shops, says he was able to escape through a small hole beside his shop. Meanwhile, the presidency has been responding to allegations by the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, that the federal government's social investment program is a failed scheme. Presidential advisor on the scheme, Mrs. Miriam Uwais, says the scheme has positively impacted the young population in various parts of the country, including Adamawa State. Mrs. Uwais says 250,000 people have benefited from the scheme in Adamawa State alone, while the social feeding program kicked off in the state in October 2018.
I believe that if she were to listen to the information that is out there, if she were to check on our data, she would be able to track all the beneficiaries. I'm saying that we have over 11,000 graduates that have been recruited and are working in every local government in her home state. We have non-graduates, 440. We started the school feeding program in October 2018. We're in 1,054 primary schools, public primary schools. We have only scratched the surface in the sense that we don't have the sufficient funding to address. We have, by our own data, at least 4.2 million indigents or Adamawa State indigents, and if we've done about 300,000 beneficiaries directly, I believe we could do so much more if we had sufficient funding. So I'm saying that yes, she may not have met them, but the truth is we are there. We are in 12 local governments for the cash transfers, and we're in 12 local governments also for the loans. So I think we have at least 290,000 beneficiaries directly that we're paying in Adamawa State.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo is giving assurance to Nigerians that the end of the story is bright in spite of what appears to be confusion and darkness. Professor Osinbajo was speaking at the 2019 presidential inauguration interdenominational service held in Abuja. He expressed confidence that the country stands at the threshold of greatness, calling on Nigerians not to take advantage of the fault lines of religion and ethnicity. Our correspondent, Gloria Mizoke, reports.
Hymns by the congregation marked the beginning of this interdenominational church service, which is part of activities leading up to the 2019 presidential inauguration on May 29. Former Head of State General Yakubu Gowon, the Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo and his wife, service chiefs, head of service and members of cabinet, among other top government functionaries, attended the service as more songs are rendered for worship. After the Bible reading, the Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, Cardinal John Onayekon, underscored the need to put things right in the country.
The truth is that our nation is not in a state for us to rejoice. The ranks of the poor are swelling like a pig, hopeless and helpless, as we watch the frustration, the affluence of the very few cruising in a different world. But all is not lost either. As we embrace a new term of government, there is need for a drastic change of government system if our nation is to be saved from imminent chaos.
On the other hand, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, says there is light at the end of the tunnel.
We must not, as Cardinal Onayekon reminded us today, permit anyone to take advantage of the fault lines of tribe and religion in our country. Our country stands today at the threshold of phenomenal greatness. If we look back or permit fear or despair, we will stumble. We may begin with darkness, we may begin with confusion, as it was at creation. But the end of our story is bright. The end of our story is good. The end of the story of this nation shall be great indeed, in the mighty name of the Lord Jesus.
Prayers also went out for the nation, as many here are hopeful that the nation will indeed see a significant reduction in the number of challenges plaguing her. From the Ecumenical Center, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
With less than 100 hours to the beginning of the next and final 4 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, what are the major tasks ahead of the President and the next Executive Council? Channels TV's data information consultant, Babajide Ogusowo, is here to answer those questions. Babajide, third time in a row we have the crystal ball.
Oh, yes, we're trying to look at the forecast for the next 4 years. Who will be the new ministers? And I've been looking carefully at this, and I see a name, Amara. And I'm not too sure if that's you. But here's what is important and what Nigerians will be looking for towards the next less than 100 hours. Mm-hmm. There's something similar between what happened 4 decades ago, what happened 4 years ago, and what Nigerians perhaps will be talking about in the next 4 days. What's this? The politics of belonging. Here's what I mean. Exactly 4 decades ago, Chief Awolowo was talking about, I know where I belong. And that was what a lot of Nigerians were talking about. That Chief Awolowo had come out in the political season to say, I know where I belong. 4 decades after that, 2015, President Buhari talked about, I belong to nobody. Now, 4 days from now, here's what Nigerians will be talking about. Where does the future of Nigeria belong? Some people will be talking about, who does 2023 belong to? But the Constitution puts a rest to this whole politics of belonging. The first mention of belongs is found in Section 14, subsection 2A of the Federal Constitution. And it says, sovereignty belongs to the people. Here's what I mean. For the next 4 years, the focus of the President and of the Executive Council should be on the people. All projects, programs, and policies should be people-centric because the people comes even before the government.
Yeah, and so what sort of projects should we have? What sort of projects and programs should the Executive Council prioritize?
So here's what I think. The first 4 years focused on projects. Projects requires spending money. The next 4 years, yes, projects are good, but the next 4 years for the President and the Executive Council should focus on policies. Because on one hand, project focuses on making money, policies focus on how to make money. And so the evidence shows that while it is important that we spend money that will support growth, development, and improve the standard of living, it is important for all ministers to also now focus on policies that will ensure that the federation makes more money. And that should be the agenda. If you are setting an agenda for the next 4 years, yes, the agenda should be great leadership, but in specifics, what should be the mission of the president and his executive council? And here's what the evidence shows. The mission of the government should be ensuring that we limit all factors that are stopping us from growing further than our current 2% growth rate. That should be the mission. Limiting all factors of growth, identifying and limiting them so that we can grow faster than we currently are.
Is there any responsibility for citizens? I mean, how apart from measuring the performance of the Executive Council, do they have a stake in this administration?
Oh, yes. Security and welfare is the purpose of the government. And so the citizens are involved in how does the government ensure that all the taxes they pay contributes to making them safer and making them more prosperous. So if there are several indicators that we could look at, but what the citizens are concerned about and the questions they should ask all elected representatives, especially now that we know the president is in his last 4 years, should be how well are we doing when we look at security and the welfare of the people. But in the final analysis, let's remember the words of John Maxwell. He says, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So the question of tonight is, what sort of options are going to be on the table for the president to ensure we grow and we develop faster?
Do the people have options?
I think the people have options. The people have elected their leaders. Now, the leaders have the responsibility to ensure that they deliver on their performance. The government, in its economic recovery and growth plan for 2019 to 2020, is targeting 4.5% growth rate. The people deserve a rate higher than that. Is the government facing challenges to ensure that it meets up to this growth rate? Yes, there are challenges, but the responsibility of the leader is not to identify the problems, is to provide solutions, Amarachi, to the problems. But the forecast clearly shows that there's hope. The days ahead look brighter than the days behind us. But we need to ensure that the stars shine. Remember, stars shine the most when it is dark. Nigeria is going through a period of darkness, and this is the time that the president needs to identify and elect the stars for the next government.
Which areas exactly will be receiving this light you're talking about? Which areas can citizens hope towards? We would begin to see this light in the tunnel.
So it will be interesting to look at three major sectors. Let's look at what will be happening in the housing sector. Let's look at what will be happening in the health sector. And let's look at what will be happening to the education sector. But what I see is some ministers will come back. Don't ask me which of the ministers will come back. By the end of the day, the citizens should be the priority of the government. Politics of belonging really focuses on what should the people have. So it will be interesting to look at the next 4 years to see how well the economy will perform and to look at the choices that President Muhammadu Buhari will make, especially regarding his executive council. Here's what you need to remember. The president and his executive council are like co-joined twins. You can't separate the performance of the president from the performance of the executive council. So they sink and swim together. And the final advice for the president is, do not swim against the tide.
And hopefully better days ahead according to your forecast.
Oh, certainly. The days ahead are brighter than the days behind us.
Well, Babajide, thank you again for joining us on the news at 10.
Do not swim against the tide, Amara. Do not swim against the tide.
I don't even know how to swim, so okay.